Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. My name is Leonard Paul. I run the School of Video Game Audio. You can check us out at sovga.com, and I am joined today by Anastasia Devana, who is going to tell us all about herself, and then we can ask some questions and get some great game audio knowledge from her today. And so, like I was telling her just before we went live, she is our lucky number 14 as far as our Q&A series here, and we also just launched the stream as far as letting you have access to all the other previous 13, and I guess once this one is on, all 14 of them, and we have about 16 hours worth of stuff for everyone to check out. So make sure to have a look at that later and stay focused for this one now. So what we'll do is that she'll give a presentation about herself for a little bit, and then after that we'll go into questions. So Anastasia, please.
All right, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm gonna do a very exciting talk where I get to talk about myself. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'll talk about my career and kind of how I got to where I am right now. I was thinking about it this morning, how I'm going to frame it. So one thing that came to mind is, every great piece of art, music, specifically art, that kind of like is told over time. So music or novel or story, oftentimes in the very first statement in the beginning, it kind of tells you what it's going to be about, right? The first sentence of a novel or the first few notes over a music piece, like Beethoven Fifth that goes da 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 da, and that is the statement. That's what the piece is going to be about. And then it goes off into maybe some other themes or variations, but it always kind of comes back to the main theme, or it comes back to it in the end. So I was thinking that my kind of career, my jobs, my very first job kind of encapsulated that in a way. My very first job was, I was 18 years old, 1 year after graduating high school. I was living in a town called Klaipėda in Lithuania, which is one of the former Soviet republics. I was studying business administration, and I had a summer break, and I was like, I should do something with myself. Uh, my One of my really good friends from college, he left for the summer, and he left me his PC computer. And I never owned a computer, so that was cool. I was playing Resident Evil on it and was freaking myself out, and also discovered the wonders of PowerPoint and Microsoft Word and all that stuff. At the same time, I was playing in a band. I guess I should back up a little bit to my musical sort of upbringing. I studied music in Russia, kind of classically trained piano player. I sang in choirs and vocal ensembles, and then at age of 15 or so, I started playing in bands, like metal bands. So playing symphonic metal, playing on my keyboard, singing, writing music, and all that. That was super fun. So anyway, in Lithuania, I was playing in this band, so I had a keyboard, and I had this computer, and somehow I had a brilliant idea that I could do a karaoke show. So I basically taught myself how to play some chords and like beats from popular songs at the time, and I put together PowerPoint slides with text, and I just decided I'm going to go to a local kind of nightclub, and I'm going to offer them to do a karaoke night. And for
Wow.
some reason, this lady, the owner of the club, let this 18-year-old run a karaoke night once a week at her club. I don't know why. And I think it was something like, let's say like $100 for the show. I mean, it was in local currency, but it was something like that. So then I'm like, okay, I need a host. So I went to a local like conservatory, and I posted some ads. I'm looking for a host for a karaoke show, and some guy responded. So I had my host, my MC. So then every week I would call a cab, and I would load my 88 key synthesizer, the computer PC with the CRT screen, and everything into the cab, into the
Wow.
taxi, go to this club, set everything up. They had a projector that, could project onto the screen. I would connect everything, and the MC would, we had a list of, I don't know, 10 songs. It was kind of laughable. Like, it was not a very great selection. But yeah, people would come up, and I would be, playing like the chords, and I'd be hitting the space bar to change the text and everything on the screen. And, that went on basically for the whole summer. So I gave like half to him. He got $50, I got $50. I spent, 10 of it on the taxi. So I was like, oh, I'm rich, I have $40 a week. Um, but it was that, it was that combination of like music and art in a way, and technology.
Hmm.
And that's been sort of the theme, I think, of my career. If you like look, over time of how it changed. So then I moved to US, and I kind of have a a whole immigrant story, which is not, you know, not like appropriate probably for this,
Hmm.
conversation. But there was waiting tables and working as in housekeeping and all that. So like for 5 years, I was sort of wandering in the dark in a way in
Hmm.
terms of career path. I mean, it was still light outside. Um, so then at some point I decided, I need to do something with my life. So I was going to school again. I decided business administration was not for me.
Hmm.
I mean, I was okay with it, but it just was not like exciting. So I went to school to study graphic design. Actually, I went to a community college. Big shout out to community colleges. It was actually really great, cheap, great. Um, so I did the whole like thing, whole certificate in graphic design.
Hmm.
Um, but what happened towards the end of that course is there was a class of web development. And back at the time, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Dreamweaver. It
Hmm.
was this
Yep.
program that, you can make websites kind of like, Wix or Squarespace, but you run it on your computer. You do kind of drag and drop, and WYSIWYG, right? It was called What You See is What You Get.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, that's cool. But then the instructor said like, oh, now press this button, and you basically see the code, the HTML code of everything that you put together. And that honestly blew my mind because, because like I could like actually intuitively understand it. I'm like, I get this. I look at this code and I get it. And I'm like, this is amazing. I can write code and something shows up like visual, like, colors and graphics and shapes and text. Like, this is awesome. Like, I want to do this. I can do this. Um, so at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be a web developer.
Hmm.
So mm, shortly after that, I kind of went back, you know, as I was coming into work at the restaurant that I was working at the time, and I just had this like realization: I cannot spend another day here.
Yeah.
Like, this is not me. I don't belong here. I
Yeah.
gave him my 2 weeks notice. I'm like, okay, well, I need to find a job now, do web development. So I applied to a few places, and again, as like, I can't believe that this club owner would let an 18-year-old, with a PC computer run a karaoke night. Somebody decided to hire me, and my CV really said like, I don't have experience doing this, I don't have education, but I'm really just so into this. I think it's amazing how you can, use code to create visuals, and I'm a really fast learner. I'm going to learn on a job, and kind of, you won't regret it. And this guy, this owner of a company, kind of took a chance on me and hired me. And I think he was pleased at the end of the day, because I did learn on the job rather quickly, and I actually learned backend programming. And in a few years after that, I was already like senior developer, doing full stack web development, working on huge websites. Actually worked on some community sites for game companies like THQ, RIP to
Hmm.
THQ at the
Yeah.
time, for Namco Bandai, like, so, worked on like pretty big stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and I did that, for a while. I was still in bands, I was still singing in choir, and I kind of got to a point in my career where it wasn't like really stimulating anymore. I'm like, okay, well, the next website is just going to be kind of more of the same, right? There's no challenge. And I'm like, well, I've always done this music thing. I really love music. Maybe I should just do music for a
Mm.
living. Um, so basically, that's what I decided to do. Basically, just stop doing web development work and went all in to music composition. I was living in LA at the time, so I actually had an acquaintance of mine was a composer for film TV, Chris Leonard, and he had his best friend and kind of business partner, Tim Wynn. They opened their studio together, like they bought a location and they were building out a studio. So I asked if I could go and intern with them. And at the same time, so I started doing that. At the same time, I went to UCLA Extension program
Mm-hmm.
for film scoring. So they have like a film scoring certificate, and UCLA Extension is a program. It's not like a bachelor degree, but it's specifically for extended learning, like adult continued education. So most of the classes are in evenings or weekends. So it was, it's kind of like convenient to do, and you can kind of do it at your own pace. Um, and another really cool thing that I feel about that specific program is you get to work with professionals, like your instructors are professionals who work in industry, and you get to work quite a bit with the local LA musicians, which
Mm.
are, you know, world renowned and amazing because, they record all this, you know, movie scores and they can sight read like you won't believe. So, that was I thought that was a great program. Like I learned, how to prepare scores, and I learned some orchestration. Like, I've never had like formal like composition educations, and this was not, of course, like all encompassing, but there was some really solid basics of like orchestration and conducting, and you know kind of like key ideas for how to score, how to score to picture, and the preparing scores and running a session. That's a really big, important skill to have. So I learned all that. At the same time was, doing internship at the studio. I won't say like it was an easy time, because going, from being a senior person in your field, well respected, really well paid, to
Mm-hmm.
then, fetching lattes for Hollywood executives. Uh,
Mm.
you take definitely take a confidence hit. And at the same time, like, I feel like, oh, now I'm competing, with all these kids that are
Mm-hmm.
just out of college. They have more energy. Like I'm old, I wasn't old. I was, I think, around 30 or so. But it felt like, oh, I'm way behind. Um, but I did okay. Scored, a bunch of short films, kind of like composers when they start out, they do a bunch of shorts. I did that. I did one feature. I did a couple of games. Um, but then I kind of like kept feeling like I'm not sure if that's the right thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
The Some of the personalities that I encountered, like especially like sort of the upper ones of like executive level,
Mm-hmm.
in Hollywood film, like I don't know, about these people. They don't seem very nice. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the schedules are kind of crazy. Like you really have to want to do this, to especially like TV work, writing 40 minutes of music a week fully produced and delivering. That's a lot, that's a lot. And you don't, you get to be creative, but it's the creativity is not all the time, 100% of the time. A lot of it is, you you're it's like I don't know how to explain it, but you're just putting things together and you're delivering, and it's really good, but it doesn't, it feels more like kind of skilled like craftsman rather
Yeah.
than an artisan sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do. I was kind of doubting my choices. um, but then I also went to my first GTC, and um, actually the first video game music instructor at UCL Extension was Gerard Marino.
Mm-hmm.
He's a video games composer. So this was his first lesson. what one good thing that he recommended is going to GDC. I mean, he recommended a bunch of other good stuff, but I think he was learning. It was his first gig too, so it was interesting, an interesting experience. But he said go to GDC and join gang and do the gang demo derby for music, and that's what I did. And I did that I think about 3 years in a row. And every time I got really good feedback at the demo derbies, and I, met a bunch of people. So I was kind of, developing a network. And, I'm like, this video game seems like people are like cooler somehow than the film people, and they're kind of more nerdy and they're doing this tech stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I was listening to talks, like stuff that at the time, um, stuff like they did on Peggle, for example, with really with like closely matching the actions in the game with the music, almost like generative music and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, I that's interesting. I get that, and I'm technical, so I think I could do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and from that point on, I just decided I'm gonna pursue sort of the video game music thing more than film. And that was going pretty well. I went to a couple of my local Unity meetups, and I started getting into Unity. I'm like, okay, yeah, I actually get all this. I can do some coding. Um, and I think towards like, well, I can't remember the years, but after like 3 GDCs or so, I was finally talking to somebody about a AAA game. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I'm gonna score my first AAA game. I'm gonna make it. This is gonna be it. Um, but at the same time, I did a couple of projects with a company in LA called Mirada Studios. So Mirada is a production of Guillermo del Toro. So they
Mm-hmm.
do, a lot of VFX and stuff like that, but also do new media projects. So they did like one of the early cardboard VR kind of VR apps on a Google Cardboard, and through a contact that I met at the Unity meetup, they wanted somebody to do spatial audio and just audio in general. So I did that project, and I tried to figure out what the hell is a spatial audio thing. And I wrote my big seminal article comparing a bunch of spatial audio plugins. That was my claim to fame in the spatial audio world. And basically, through that experience, I ended up getting a connection to this company called Magic Leap. Um, and they're like, oh, well, there's this Magic Leap. They're doing this, who knows what, but they're looking for people like you who kind of understand technology and understand sound and understand spatial audio. So I got in touch with Magic Leap, and I looked them up, and I had no idea what it was. That's back when it was totally covered in mystery, and nobody knew what the company was, and they were in Florida. But I was like, what the heck? I'll give it a shot. So I agreed on working on a part-time contract with them, while still pursuing my other sort of leads and composing leads. And the first time I went to work on site at Magic Leap, um, because I went to Florida for a week to meet the team to do some work there. I basically arrived, flew in on Sunday. I worked Monday, Tuesday. On Wednesday, I called my husband and I said, I kind of want to work here. Like, I'm gonna take this job. Um, so if you don't know what Magic Leap is, it's a company. They're based in Florida, and they're making wearable AR device, right? So as compared to VR, like when you have a VR device, you totally don't see the world around you. You just see the virtual content. With AR, you see the world, and you also see virtual content in your world around you. Um, but it wasn't really the technology that drew me in. It was the people who I met who worked there. Super passionate, super smart, super cool. I'm like, wow, I want to work with these people. Like, this may crash and burn in a few years, but it's going to be like a wild ride, and it's going to be an amazing experience. And well, it really was, and it it didn't totally crash and burn. I I ended up working there for 5 years and ended up becoming the audio director. Um, Kind of hiring, ended up hiring more people, building a team. We worked on a bunch of really, really cool content. We got sort of the freedom of explore this new medium creatively. Everything from collaborating with Sigur Rós band on like the Tonandi Experience, which is
Mm-hmm.
interactive musical album, to like kind of playful sandbox experiences that just introduce the person to augmented reality, to the last light, which was like sort of our magnum opus, which is like a story, really a story, like a short interactive film experience. um so that was awesome. It was just really great, fantastic experience. Learned a lot, made a lot of amazing connections, got to travel, got to speak at different conferences. Really, one of a kind sort of opportunity. Unfortunately, when COVID started, Magic Leap sort of hit a bump in the road, and they had a pretty significant layoff. It was about half the company,
Mm-hmm.
so they actually completely eliminated the Magic Leap Studios, the creative part, which I was a part of Magic Leap Studios. So for about 2 years after that, I was doing some freelance projects, some really interesting ones. I ended up working with um, the Shakespeare Royal Company that partnered with Marshmallow Laser Feast and the Manchester Festival. So
Mm-hmm.
they put on this performance called Dream Online. This was streamed live. I think they had about 60,000 people who ended up watching it live over 10 performances. But the core concept of it was that all the performers were wearing motion capture outfits, and their movements were streamed into Unreal, and they were then performing as virtual characters in a virtual world. In terms of sound, there was quite a number of challenges. So as an audio director, I was supposed to figure out all the technology and how it's all going to work together, and also making sure it sounds good. So I ended up bringing on a sound designer, bringing on another kind of tech sound designer to help with the implementation. But there was basically live, mics, of course, voice performance, which is key. There was pre-recorded like symphonic orchestral music from the Philharmonia Orchestra, which was also a partner in this. There was live sound design driven by the motion capture, so kind of like creature sounds,
Mm-hmm.
which was really tricky in that environment. Of course, ambient sounds of the forest and different parts that they were going through. And sorry, I forgot to mention it was based on kind of inspired by the Midsummer Night's Dream. Um, and lastly, there was another piece called Gesturement, which was used as a plugin. And what Gesturement does, it takes kind of some kind of the input data, continuous input data. In this case, it was actually gesture of the performance, and turns it into musical notes that are quantized in pitch and tempo to the predetermined musical rules.
Mm-hmm.
So like all these pieces of technology had to work together and not break and sound good. So that was cool and that was fun. And about a month ago, after doing different freelancing gigs, I actually joined a new company. They're called RA Research,
Mm-hmm.
and what they do is they make augmented reality glasses without screens, and they're glasses for blind people. So the idea is that the glasses can use all the sensors that are kind of common on AR, wearables, AR glasses. So the glasses can sense the world and understand the world. And then we take that information and we convey it through sound to the blind or otherwise visually impaired person, and basically help them, navigate the world, help them know what everything is and where it is, and stuff like that. And my role is the head of audio experience. So basically, I'm figuring out the whole sound part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so coming from karaoke with a weird computer and and the keyboard, I'm basically doing the same thing, just trying to use weird, crazy technology to make sounds uh,
Mm-hmm.
and make people's life better somehow. And that's my
Wow.
story. Sorry if it took too long.
No, 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 it's good. And that's the thing is that, yeah, we have plenty of time and plenty of. I guess we'll get questions now for people that are on the YouTube streams. So, yeah, I mean, the questions that I have, I'll start out with. For me, I think a lot of people are joining to ask you about like spatial audio stuff. So, I think one of the things that I could do as far as a question is sort of ask you like if you were to sort of you know what are the like the sort of like a burning sort of challenge for you within spatial audio at this point, like what is something that you're really interested in by that particular field?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Huh. Hmm. There's so many.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Well, and I can look at it from different angles, to be honest. Like
Yep.
from a perspective of being a freelance developer working on spatial audio projects, um, I think a big sort of gap right now is, and it sounds surprising in 2022, where XR technologies seems like have exploded and it's everywhere and everyone is doing it, is really not a good um, cross-platform spatial audio solution.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I still use and or have used for the last 2 years is Google Resonance,
Mm-hmm.
which is cross-platform. It works pretty well. But the problem with Google Resonance is that it went into open source, a few years ago. I would say three years ago, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not well supported. So I'm just waiting for the day till it stops working. It becomes incompatible with whatever the new version of Unity, whatever it is. Like the other plugins that were in the market are, they're either bought by a different company and put like in a walled garden, so they only
Mm-hmm.
work on that specific platform, or they just don't support all platforms, or they have some weird design solutions that I don't find intuitive,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't sound very good. For
Mm-hmm.
AR specifically, I think the bar for AR um, is quite a bit higher than say for 360 video work, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're doing 360 video, and there's a lot of that work right now, right? So for 360 video, it's only like three degrees of freedom movement, right? So meaning you can rotate your head, around
Mm-hmm.
and see the 360 video around you, but you cannot. There's no translation, right? You cannot move
Yeah.
forward, back, side to side, so you cannot get close to anything. The objects are as far away as they appear in the video. With AR and most VR, really, it's 6 degrees of freedom,
Mm-hmm.
which you can get really close to an object, and that's where when some of the spatial audio plugins kind of start to fall apart. When if you move your head side to side and you feel like really distinct, like change, like it's not as smooth.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of feel like the panning sort of flipped to one side or the other, which doesn't sound natural. Um, so that's a big one for, I think, for people who just kind of like are working on a bunch of different projects and need a solution, right? I just want to start doing spatial audio. So I think, yeah, Google Resonance so far is still the one,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody knows how long it's going to last in a way. And there's there are other challenges that kind of haven't been solved on an actual algorithm level yet. I have not heard a good solution, like stuff like spatialization, like below the waist, like anything down below doesn't spatialize well at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kind of volumetric sounds, we're still treating every sound as a point source. So
Mm-hmm.
when something is big and the whole big thing is to make sound, we still don't really know how to do that efficiently and convincingly. And there's lots more, but yeah, these are
Yeah.
these are some big ones.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And I guess another follow-up question is the difference between working in, say, AR versus like, spatial audio, say for a video game where you're just, you're not in your space, physically like you are in AR, but you're in the game space. Like, how do you find,
Mhm.
like, as far as the differences, say, well, we can do it either creatively or from the technology side, but what would you underline are some key differences between those two different areas of spatial audio?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't. I know that a couple of games have done spatial audio in sort of a third person perspective. I think Horizon Forbidden West maybe have done that, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't actually listened to that with headphones on, so I don't know how successful that was. But I think the weird challenge to me is with spatial audio, right? The sounds are represented as they would be heard from the listener's perspective, right? That's basically how HRTFs work. That's the technology, and
Hmm.
HRTF is a head-related transfer function. So it's basically taken like 2 points in space. One point is where your head is and kind of which way it's pointing, and the other point is the sound source, and it's applying this HRTF transfer function to make you think or perceive that sound right there. Um, when it comes to you sitting on a couch and holding the controller and playing a third person video game with spatial audio, well, the game doesn't know where your head is, right?
Hmm.
You could be sitting close by or far away or off to the side. So, what is the HRTF being applied like in relation to? Is it in relation to the character that you see on screen?
Yes.
Um, so that's it's kind of an open question for me. Like I don't know, you probably can somehow do it successfully, but I just haven't heard it, so I don't know how well that works. Maybe
Hmm.
it's amazing.
Yeah, I guess the thing, because I've worked just briefly like using the HoloLens, like we had chatted a little bit
Mhm.
about before, is that the thing that was interesting with that is that they have sort of like a very narrow band, like headphone sort of like, I mean, speaker system that
Mhm.
is on the
Mhm.
headset, but that is
Mhm.
really not at all like you can't do anything really spatial with that. It's very much kind of like very mid-rangey, and it doesn't allow you to get any bass or anything like that. The thing that is
Right.
helpful about it is because it's sort of meant more for corporate, like business to business kind of presentations and
Mhm.
stuff, because of the you know it's expensive, but it really doesn't have any idea of like having that you know AR or XR space like being mapped that properly, like a full bandwidth version into your ears. Do you know of any solutions that do that? Like, is there any Apple thing coming up, or other
No.
headsets that do it better? There isn't. Wow.
Well, okay, so no, I
Huh.
think the problem is, well, the mid-range thing, I don't know. I honestly don't have that much experience on HoloLens.
Mm.
So I haven't like had time to analyze it.
Yeah.
I know, for example, on Magic Leap, the spatialization itself was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And actually high range response was, high range was actually quite hot on the Magic Leap, so we had to like tone down a lot of things. But that it's good for spatialization because like those cues, like they're at 1K like and above, what
Mm-hmm.
helps you actually like spatialize sounds. So like Magic Leap one wasn't mid rangey, it was more high rangey if anything.
Mm-hmm.
The bass is just that's a problem with physics, right? You
Yeah.
cannot really push low frequencies out of a small speaker.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you start with a small speaker like that, you start losing stuff like below, I don't know, 500 hertz or something like that. Um, I think you can do more with headphones, like like the thing that I'm wearing, bigger, sort of bigger driver.
Mm-hmm.
That that can do more bass obviously. Then if you're doing AR, you need really nice pass through, because the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing with AR is augmented reality. You're augmenting the world, you're not trying to replace it. So like one of the core sort of design principles, for us, for our team at Magic Leap, if you're making an AR experience, you should be able to play it at sort of the default volume level and still be able to have a conversation with the person in your room.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to stay pretty sparse. You don't want to start masking their voice, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be another thing with bass frequencies. Like even if you could push them, that would actually mask, a lot of real world sounds. So yeah, a lot of fun and interesting challenges for for
Yeah.
continuing in this.
Yeah, I wanted to ask those questions because I haven't been in the space, as it were. Like, I've been working on the school, and I'm also working on a
Hmm.
game which is just more of an educational game for primarily for high
Hmm.
school students and stuff like that. So it's interesting to hear of like new technologies and whatnot. I'm just, for me, that was the thing. I'm just, like the, say if you describe the headset that you have, like it's open air and then you can basically hear what's going on, like,
Oh, this one?
yeah.
This one?
Or
This
those,
no, this is
those are closed.
AirPods Max.
Mm.
Yeah, it's closed. They
Ah,
actually
there you
have
go.
microphones
Mm-hmm.
around, so it's
Ah,
digital pass-through. It's not, yeah, it's not open back.
right.
But they this one, they do a pretty good job actually at like spatial audio. Like if I,
Mm-hmm.
go like this,
Yeah.
it sounds quite natural, but it's
Ah,
actually passing through the microphones on the actual headset. Now, the cool
nice.
part about it is, for example, if you go with something like this into a really loud environment,
Mm-hmm.
you can actually, you know, still say add augmented audio content, and you can like turn down the sound of the real environment so you don't get like ear damage. I'm just picturing you at a concert. You
Mm-hmm.
could actually bring this down so that it can work almost like as a, you know, partial like earplugs, and you can add like additional content to that. So there's
Mm-hmm.
definitely benefits to something like this if it works well, if
Yeah.
it sounds natural.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I don't have a pair of those, so I was just like, well, that's news to me. I mean, I have the the Sennheiser 650s, which are the open air, but that's like natural
Hmm.
open air, and I find that
Yeah.
that's kind of helpful for me, just so that my ears don't get all because I use them a lot. They don't get super claustrophobic-y. So we do have some questions here. So okay. Um, uh, do you happen to know any prosumer level spatial audio plugins other than Steam Audio that currently support full occlusion? That's a technical question.
I mean, I think Google Resonance does that. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you can do. They have basically. I mean, good luck with Google Resonance. You might have to like assemble it from different parts of the internet to get it to work, because, like I said, it's not really totally fully supported. So there might have to be some scouting involved. But if you do get it to work, it has, at least in Unity, you can apply like material types to your geometry, and then they have kind of like a baking step where you can bake, and it will do like occlusion and obstruction and all that stuff, and reflections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried that out with the 3D game kit with it's like a Unity demo game, and it
Hmm.
does. The original version used to have Google Resonance like in it, so they were like
Hmm.
featuring it, and then like over the versions they like took it out, and I think that
Yeah.
it was basically like because it wasn't being supported, and it is a little bit of
Yeah,
that
I think so.
abandonware kind of vibe, which is it's unfortunate to have that. I guess
Hmm.
there's other solutions as well. I know that Wise has some spatial audio stuff, and then there's also Project Acoustics from Microsoft, and they're putting that into Unreal as well. So those
So
are.
Wise, yeah, Wise, like, I think it's a little bit of misnomer.
Mm-hmm.
So Wise has amazing system for setting up like sound propagation and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What it doesn't do, as far as I know, like last time I checked, it doesn't actually apply the final step in the spatialization, which is the HRTF plugin or head related transfer function. So we'll do all the math for like
Mm-hmm.
calculating the stuff, but you still need something else on top of that to actually make it fully 100% quote unquote spatial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, the this is actually a question is that I'm curious when you have different like listening environments, be it like somebody's listening on well, hopefully not mono, but like stereo, which of course would be the worst, I guess, and then you've got like surround, and then also headphones. How do you adjust the spatial audio experience to those different like basically like listening environments?
Well, and I mean, to be honest, like spatial audio is only meant to be listened over stereo. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
At least when
Yes.
you apply an HRTF plugin, because
Mm-hmm.
and specifically headphones, not speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because like what it does, it assumes that the point of sound reproduction is basically at your ear
Mm-hmm.
and applies this transfer function as if there was like a microphone in your ear, like listening to things. So headphones are the best. And it won't be unless you have like some logic to turn that off, turn HRTF processing off. Like it won't
Mm-hmm.
work well on, surround speakers, for example.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I know it's not spatial audio, but back years ago there was Q sound, which they had that at the arcades and stuff, and like you'd have the stereo speakers, but the sound would sound like a bit wider, basically. But
Mm.
that's not really spatial audio. And then I guess another sort of spatialization, of course, is like Dolby Atmos as well. So, like when you're developing sort of, different spatial audio experiences, do you look to basically like render to sort of like binaural or also to Atmos, or is it usually just one sort of, platform that you're delivering to?
So in my personal experience, I've mostly worked with stuff that's meant to be delivered over headphones.
Mm-hmm.
So it's either AR or VR. Rarely does one have, Adobe Atmos like set up following them around when they're doing the VR.
Yeah.
Uh, so in my experience, I haven't like I've actually played around with like Dolby Atmos just to see what that's all about.
Mm-hmm.
It is really like, as far as I could tell, it is really meant more for like it's not meant for anything that's close, right? There's no like close proximity way. There's no actual way to make anything sound like it's close by. Because I was actually messing with Dolby to try this, the new Apple support for like spatial, music and all that. But really, as far as I can tell, all it does is it takes your mix and it kind of puts it in a virtual speaker setup that speakers are as far away, as they would be, right? And then they applied HRTF plugs in to kind of make it sound like, okay, imagine there were surround speakers around you,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't make a sound like go and like fly by your ear or anything like that. It's just Dolby Atmos doesn't really support that, as far as I can tell.
Right.
Um, so yeah, if I was working in, I don't know, like a dome installation or, something like is meant to be experienced like on a speaker array, that would be a different question. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, all the kind of content and experience that I've worked on were or basically delivery over headphones for the most part.
Okay, cool. We do have a response from this is from Damien from Audio Kinetic, and he says Wise will deliver the audio objects, channel-based mixed and pass-through mix for an endpoint binauralizer for processing, and this is without plugins and relies upon the platform to process. So that's what he's saying is the current state of Wise, because he not only
Yeah,
knows what Wise is doing right now, but what Wise will be doing
yeah,
too. So
yeah.
yeah.
So it's essentially what I said. Yeah. So the
Mm-hmm.
binauralizer is like the final stage, the HRTF plugin. It's what takes all these objects and applies that final head-related transfer function to actually make it sound like it's around you while you're wearing headphones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could put it on the speaker array and then you don't need to binauralize.
Right. Yeah, because they're, as far as I know, they're sort of moving their shift between like instead of having a set sort of renderer where it's like, oh, this is going to be for stereo or it's going to be for surround.
Hmm.
It's like they're working with game objects, and then they allow
Yeah.
that final sort of whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really
Yeah.
cool change. It makes it a lot more flexible.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
So
you, Damien.
cool. Here's a question. This one says follow up question. Sorry. So, does Anastasia think ambisonic spatialized audio has a place in the future point sources sound in 3DR non-VR games and/or 3D VR games? So, will it make sense to implement positional binaural sounds? And so this is related to, I guess, having something that's ambisonic spatialized, either in 3D VR or non VR games. So sort of mixing, having something that's basically like an ambisonic sound coming in to, I guess, an existing mix. Well, that does. I'm pretty sure that happens already. Okay, and then the follow up here is as in sounds that preserve the HRTF phenomenon that makes the user feel as they are within a sound space.
Okay, I'm not totally sure I am totally following, but I'll try to answer it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just gonna speak in general about like ambisonics and pre-rendered binaural.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think ambisonic um, audio definitely has a place. The way I think about it is more of skybox, kind of like an audio skybox. Because again, you cannot translate within an ambisonic field. You can only like turn around. So like with skybox, you cannot get closer to like a cloud, right? It will always kind of follow you around
Mm-hmm.
as a sphere with the sky painted on it. So that's how I think about ambisonic pre-rendered like ambisonic tracks. Um, what's good about them is you can use field recordings, made with ambisonic microphones. If you really like a specific like sound of a location, you can use that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it might be good for preserving like just file size and channel count if you don't need like super high resolution. Like let's say you wanted to paint a picture, quote unquote, of all the sounds around you. You could use a bunch of point sources, say 100 point sources all around you, or you can kind of like render it out to a first order, second order, third order ambisonics, and you just minimizing your channel counts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you don't need like a really high precision, what that is. I mean, it works great. Ambisonics is super great for any kind of read-off experience, like linear experience. 360 video basically. In terms of like pre-rendered binaural, the thing is pre-rendered binaural, you cannot then apply any head rotation, right? Like if you heard the barbershop, and if you haven't, go on YouTube after you finish watching this, not right now,
Mm-hmm.
search for, I don't know, spatial audio barbershop.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically an experience that was recorded with a binaural microphone. And, it's very effective, right? There's people cutting your hair and putting plastic bags on your head and all that kind of stuff. Like it
Yeah.
works really well. But if you turn your head, like the whole thing travels with your head.
Mm-hmm.
So if the person in the game can turn their head or move the camera, I don't think it's going to be very effective because it actually travels with you. I think there's a room to use binaural for an effect, because in my opinion, usually binaural recordings are a lot more like are a lot more realistic sounding than like binauralized sound, especially when you do stuff in close proximity, like that cutting of your head, cutting of your
Yeah.
hair with scissors. So if you're using like short sounds for effect, somebody whispered like right behind you, and there's like not enough time for the user to turn around to be like, oh wait, it traveled with me. um, I think that could work really well with some kind of whooshes or flybys. Also, like I think binaural was used effectively in a few video games. There was a can't remember the name of the video game, but I think the idea is they were kind of like slowly going insane. And you heard all these like voices around you, like whispering and talking to you. And that was kind of like a really effective way of using binaural recordings.
Mm-hmm. I think I was just thinking as you're talking about ambisonic, and I really like the analogy of the sky dome analogy for audio, and I think that maps exactly onto like 3D video or 360 video. Is that basically
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of like the analogous sort of version of the audio is that you can do ambisonic that way. And yeah, like that's something that commonly happens in video games is where you have, well, in music as well. Obviously, you have all your stems, you have your full mix, and then you mix that down for whatever your delivery platform is. And in this case, you're taking those
Mm-hmm.
100 point sources and then mixing them down into an ambisonic, well, whatever ambisonic sound, and then you can use that
Yeah.
sort of a folded down version that doesn't have quite the amount of resolution and not the same
Mm-hmm.
amount of flexibility as well. I guess it would be kind of interesting. I don't know if there are technologies to take something that's. I guess you would have to know the HRTF and like basically like deconvolve it to be able to like bend an existing binauralized sound. I don't know. It probably wouldn't be
Mm.
worth it because you'd have so many issues with the high frequencies anyways. It would be better just to do it
Yeah.
properly. And I
Mm.
did look up the barbershop, the specialized barbershop recording, and that was done by Q Sound. So that's an interesting,
Mm.
you know, it's an older recording, and it's definitely worthwhile to check that one out on SoundCloud if you can, because the versions typically on YouTube are older, and so they just don't have the upper resolution as much as say
Mm.
SoundCloud does. So just a little note there. There's a question about what do you think of Apple's announcement about scanning your measurements? I guess these are like ear measurements, head measurements. Like how does yeah.
So there, I mean, that first research of that came out well a while ago. I remember seeing that a few years ago, and I know there have been a couple of companies already doing that. I feel like Sony maybe was offering that, and I don't want to like say the company name wrong, but
Hmm.
I know there was at least one other one that would do that, that you could take pictures of your ears with the iPhone and sort of send it to them, upload it, and it would kind of give you back custom HRTFs. So, it's another case of Apple doing something that other people have done and saying
Mm-hmm.
like, look at us, we invented this cool new thing. Um, I haven't heard it. I don't know how effective it is. I'm looking forward to trying it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the jury's sort of out, of how well that works.
Yeah. From I guess it was with the launch of the PlayStation 5, there was this big, movement of spatial audio at that point. There seemed to be a big push, and there was this idea that they would. It's I could be getting this wrong, but I believe that they were using sort of like like you could select sort of like a selection of like skins like hats. It's kind of like which HRTF works best for you. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if they've changed that. Do you happen to know where that technology is at with the PlayStation 5?
I still don't have a PS5,
Neither do
so
I.
I don't know.
Yeah.
One day maybe I'll get it when PS6 comes out or something. Yeah, I
Hmm.
honestly don't know. I don't know. I heard just the buzz, like, oh, we have all the spatial audio stuff, but I, honestly never got a chance to see what that's all about.
Yeah, from the comments, it sounded like Genelec and Oral ID are some companies that are doing ear scanning technology for your personalized
Mm-hmm.
HRTF. So I can't verify that, but I'm just going to say it anyways because it's hopefully this person knows what they're talking about. Um, so some people have speculated that HRTF sound phenomenon in binaural slash ambisonic audio mixes can still work with bone conduction headset technology. I don't know if this is possible, but what do you think? Exactly.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Hmm.
maybe I don't know.
Yeah. To me, that
Now
was.
I'll say like yeah. I mean, or this is not specifically to answer to address this, but I know even at Magic Leap when we were trying to solve the bass issue or the lack of bass, we tried like different bone conduction and different sort of like vibration, like the bests and the butt kicker and all that stuff, and just it
Yep.
just wasn't the same. It just was kind of underwhelming. Like I'm sure it's cool, but like it's not bass. It's something
Hmm.
else. And I think with the prolonged use, it actually might work. Your brain might sort of adapt to it. Just interestingly, a friend of mine got this little bracelet, and he has like upper range hearing loss.
Hmm.
And what the bracelet does, whenever it detects the sibilant sound, it actually does a little buzz. So to like
Uh,
understand speech better, when I say sibilant, like
hmm.
so for every one of those like high range things, it gives him a little buzz. And he said like after a few days or a week, he now hears it as sibilant sound. So the brain kind of made a connection between the haptic feedback
Hmm.
and kind of replaces it with hearing the sibilants, which I think is
Wow.
pretty interesting. So there's
Yeah.
some kind of brain neuroplasticity thing at work.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is very cool. I guess, well, I'll just say that for people that are watching, we have sort of 5 minutes to the hour, and I hope you're okay for a little bit longer past that, I hope.
Um, I'm so
Dou-
sorry. Let me just double check to
Double
make sure
check
I
your
don't have a
schedule.
I don't have a meeting that,
Hmm.
and I can tell people um that I'll be late. I don't think so, but let me double check.
Yeah, it's good to make sure. So, once again, thanks
I
everybody for
I'm good.
joining.
No, I'm
You're good?
I'm good for another hour. Yeah,
Okay, cool, cool.
yeah.
So we have a bit of space because I think we have a few people wanting to dig into some questions, and I also just want to say for people that can only join us for the hour, that's cool too. So I'll say thanks for uh, joining. We'll keep running a bit more. We'll to ask more questions. So yeah, because it's basically quite a deep topic, and I think as far as that sort of like cross-modal thing, where you're using your ears and then also haptics, I guess you'd say, maybe that would kind of like, I know that you can't necessarily talk in depth about your current project, but like there is some really interesting things happening, like with spatial audio and the work that you've done with, I guess, basically sort of like, I guess, healthcare, or like working with, yeah, different levels of hearing and different levels of sight. So maybe if you can speak a little bit about how you see spatial audio addressing those kind of issues, and why, yeah, why you're interested in those topics currently.
I don't know if you can hear my cat, but
Yeah, I
he's
can hear a little
trying
bit.
to try to break into the room, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Rowan. he'll
Aw.
he'll start destroying things once he gets in.
Aw.
For everybody who feels bad about my cat, so do I.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right, so no, it's a good topic. I think as soon as we started working on Magic Leap, and it was probably for the same people who start working on HoloLens. Like it was kind of a realization that you are wearing a device that, in a way, can see the world and hear the world, and kind of sense the world. Not quite the same as a human, but you know, with some degree of accuracy. So it can be used as an assistive device, right? We can, kind of start replacing, um, you know, like sensory replacement, not quite replacement, but like sensory augmentation, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
um, where the device can, help like visually impaired or hearing impaired people. I think in general, even if the device is not being used as an assistive technology, I think there's some good use cases for spatial audio in as also like as assistive technology in VR, AR, XR, right? I just attended the XR Access Symposium. It was
Mm-hmm.
like an event online that talked about XR accessibility and accessibility in XR.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll be putting a lot of the talks, or all of the talks, up online. So definitely, if you're interested in that, check it out. But one of the conversation was, for example, uh, low sight accessibility in VR, and they were looking at the case study of Mozilla Hubs and
Mm-hmm.
how Mozilla Hubs is sort of they're changing, adding like specific tools and changing the code so that people can, navigate Mozilla Hubs, which is like a VR environment,
Mm-hmm.
not only with screen readers, but also kind of like using spatial audio to help them like orient in the environment. I don't know if that totally answers it, but yeah, like I'm just in general kind of I'm really interested in what is the positive effect that this new technology can have on the world. Like, what real problems is it solving? And in my mind, it's not really about like as much about audio, because in my opinion, like audio is going to be involved in any solution, um, because the more senses that are used, right? Um, the more immersive that experience becomes, like the more richer information that the person is getting, or richer feedback. So I'm not kind of separating audio as its own thing, because I just, in my mind, audio is going to be a part of everything, and it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So yeah, just looking at the fields, like education and like medicine and training, and like accessibility where XR can do a lot of good.
Hmm.
Now it just has a big role to play in all of that.
Yeah, I was just thinking with the headset that you have for people that are, basically like, yeah, that have like hearing loss, that it would be one way to a lot of, you will go sort of more deaf or like have a hearing loss just in one side. So is there a way with your headset, say, to be able to differentially change like the sound that's coming from the outside on one side, I guess, like to change the mix basically? Or do you think I mean, I don't know how expensive they are, but I mean, it could be something for someone that's interested in not having a hearing aid. I know I've dealt with family personally that they just like aesthetically and they just don't want to feel
Mm.
like they're old. And so
Mm.
there might be technologies like this that allow you to just be like, hey, I just happen to have my headset on. It allows me to hear better, and at the same time it doesn't make you feel like somebody has to like scream in your ear because they see that you have like like an assistive device for
Mhm.
hearing.
Yeah, like right now we're not doing that. I mean, we're starting pretty small. It's sort of an early stage, startup, um, and it's focused more on right now. It's all about vision
Hmm.
loss, blind and visually impaired. But of course, if they already have hearing aids, they should be able to connect that and have it work seamlessly with existing hearing aids.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, because it's one of those things that I did feel like when working with the HoloLens, because like there was a point when I had them on, and then I kind of, I mean, they were relatively heavy, but at the same time, I was just doing some things, and then I was talking to someone, and especially when talking to someone in the real world, I just sort of, I was less active about like, oh, hey, I'm like in, AR space. And so I talked to them and then I looked back and because there was an object on the table that was like an AR object. And I looked at it and I was just like, oh, yeah, it's there. And then I was just like, no, wait, it's not actually there. And it was just it's very interesting to have those kind of experiences and kind of go like, wow, that is really working. Like, and the thing is that almost simultaneously I was just like, but the thing is that bothers me is that this headset is so expensive and I would love to be able to
Mm.
share this with more people, but to me that is a really huge sort of roadblock. Is just the how expensive these technologies are. So I think, like you're saying, with the technology that you're working with, the nice thing is that the people that it would go to, they would get a subsidized kind of like unit so that it would be more
Yep.
accessible for them.
Yep.
But I guess maybe did you ever find that, say, like with working with Magic Leap or like other companies where you're working on something and you're kind of like, well, I wish that this could like reach more people, or
Of course.
yeah,
Of
yeah,
course. Yeah, I
fair
wish all
enough.
the stuff we worked on could reach more people. No, I
Yeah.
mean it's really it's not the fault of the companies, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
really about the business and the market readiness in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the money right now, even though a lot of people are excited about XR, there are barriers like the current AR glasses are not really socially acceptable to wear in public, right? So
Right.
that immediately kind of takes away the whole consumer market. Like there will be enthusiasts who want to try it and who want to do it at home, and oh, that's cool. But like,
Yes.
there's not like a all day, everyday utility. While and nobody wants to wear like these glasses just around town. So
No.
part of it is technology, like how do we minimize it, make it look more like glasses and more acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in the meantime, until technology gets there, there is money in enterprise applications. Like there are actually useful, applications that increase productivity and and all that stuff in enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So I think HoloLens and Magic Leap are both like focusing on that right now. So you got to keep your business afloat and wait until the time that technology catches up and consumers kind of like understand what this thing is and why you would want to use it. So it's just going to
Mm-hmm.
take time. I think it will be, get there
Yeah.
eventually because there's so many just I think simple everyday uses that would just like, hey, if I'm going to a bus stop, I just want to see the schedule when is the next bus coming right next to the bus stop.
Hmm.
Just simple little thing. Or hey, I just want to see the directions to get in front of me, like on the ground, as opposed to like looking at my phone and, oh, where am I? Which street am I on?
Yeah.
Just little things like that.
Yeah, I guess that once again, sort of speaking, I guess, from not in the sort of like health context of accessibility, but just like it can produce like two like same thing as people that can get online easily and people that have a harder time getting online or that have like like don't have access to high bandwidth, that it can also create problems where you have people that are able to be like, oh, like I can see what the bus or whatever thing is that's coming because it's like my glasses happen to know from my location and like my settings, whereas other people, I don't know, they might simply, there obviously will have to have other technologies, but it's also something from a design perspective that I think is important. So hopefully, you know create this, understand that there's different entry level points for different people in
Yeah,
a
of
different
course.
experience.
Yeah,
And
of
so,
course.
yeah,
Of
that's
course.
something that
Yeah.
I've tried to do at the school is always make it so that people that have low bandwidth connections can still like access the course and get a
Mm-hmm.
full experience, because it's very easy, being on, the left coast here, that we have fairly high bandwidth,
Mm-hmm.
and but
Mm-hmm.
not everybody does. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
Yeah. And
yeah.
honestly, that was my um I'm excited about where the technology is going, but in some ways I am also not excited about where some of the technology is going at all. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I joined this company and not, you know, some other ones.
Yeah.
Not to name names, not to offend
No.
anyone, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I think the vision, right now that might be presented of the metaverse is like, okay, it's a kind of toy for rich people. That's
Fair
let's
enough.
monetize everything and monetize every social interaction, and I'm
Yep.
not super into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I guess. Well, one question that I have is about programming, because when you did a brief stint with us at the school, and you were awesome at doing the Unity coding stuff, like no problems at all. And so I'm curious from your background, like with working in, you seem to pick up everything that you need to learn and that you're interested in every different stage. And with some other people that I've talked to, within game audio, there's it's definitely, we've people have expressed that it's not, essential to know coding, but I'm curious about your experience knowing how to code, how that changes like, your set of possibilities of what you can do within the industry.
I mean, I'll say in a way, you know, this is not a humble brag. It's just like reality. Like in a way, I won kind of the genetic lottery and being
Mm.
able to pick up coding easily, and you know, like that's been, I've just been lucky that way. That I
Mm-hmm.
was able to like just learn on a job, and it's like, I get that. And of course, there's things that I don't get. I still don't understand quaternion, so no matter how many times I try to wrap my brain around it, I just don't
Yes.
get it. I
Yeah.
don't get it.
Yeah.
Um, but so, I've kind of like I get by. I use my Stack Overflow, and when I need to do anything, rotate an object,
Mm-hmm.
usually can kind of keyboard smash my way to to finally rotating it the way I need to. Um, no, but I mean, at least in my kind of um, in my personal career path has been completely like essential. That's been a key part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it's not just knowing how to code. I think once you get the concepts of, I don't know if it like develops your logical thinking better. I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg in
Mm-hmm.
in my case, but it just helps you understand, I think, just systems better in general, and how things work. And it helped me like with the ability to talk like at Magic Leap to all kinds of different groups, from our like audio algorithm designers to like computer vision groups to SDK. So yeah, it definitely, and of course, like I've written a ton of my own tools, and
Mm-hmm.
hey, I can imagine like the thing that I want to do, and I can, sit down and make it happen. Um, if you're relying on a programmer, if you're like a sound designer or composer or combination, and you want to do something cool, you really either need to like learn to do it yourself, or you need to find a programmer that really gets it and is into audio and is going to help you. Because I think like generalist programmers are, for the most part, not not totally like generalizing, but they don't get it and they don't care about audio, and
Yeah.
they don't want to do audio tools, for example, or they don't know
Hmm.
why they would do it. So yeah, it helps if you have the capacity and for it to to pick up programming. I highly recommend it.
Nice. I'm
And you
curious.
can make,
Yeah.
hey, if you're struggling like financially, trying to make it as a sound designer, like programmers are in high demand and get paid well, if you're decent.
Yeah, yeah. There's a grad Phil that he did amazing. He's an amazing composer, great performer. He's a jazz guitar player, and yeah, basically he moved over to doing programming. And I'm trying to get him to continue to compose for the Eco game, but he's so busy doing interviews this week that he
Mhm.
hasn't been able to submit anything. So yes, I would fully concur with that and say, like, if you want a job within games, doing anything with game audio as far as the programming side, even just like with 1 year ish experience, like at a community college, or just taking online courses where you're, actually being able to generate some projects. Yeah, I think that would be a, if it's your thing though. It's also like it's a bit of a
If it's a
left
thing,
turn,
it's not everybody's thing. Yeah.
no. And I guess that's a follow up question, is that for yourself, like from your background, did you ever find, like when you were growing up, that, there was an idea that you could or couldn't do coding, or was it just not even like, on your radar at all when you were growing up?
Uh, well, so I grew up in Soviet Union back in the
Mm-hmm.
day. Um, I never had a computer until I went to college. We had one kind of like what's called informatics class. So we
Mm-hmm.
had this computers with like green letters, the
Mm-hmm.
really old school stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like I think we had it for like 3 years, and only 1 year we actually got to do anything on the computer. For the most part, it was like teaching how to convert from binary to decimal and just like rules for different base conversions, and like taught us just like how to write like algorithm flows, like if statements, and kind of like designing on paper, basically the logic flows. Um, but the 1 year that we did get to code a little bit, yeah, like it was quite easy for me. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like I could do this, but we
Mm-hmm.
didn't really do much, and there was not much opportunity to do it afterwards. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think we did like some, what was it? I think it was just basic, just really small like programs in basic, and there was something with like a turtle that would
Yep.
draw
Logo.
lines. You had to like the
Yeah, I
logo. I
did
think
that
that's what it
too.
was. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But the thing is, like, they're like, go home and figure out your whole program of what the turtle would draw, and then come into class, and like you have like a period of time where you like enter it and see if it does what you think it would do.
Yep.
So yeah, yeah, it was cool. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
pretty limited exposure.
yeah. No, I was just curious because it seems like it is, yeah, genetic lottery is one thing, but I also think that's, the nature nurture, like the society is
Hmm.
another thing too. And I find that, yeah, I'm not trying, I'm fine with coding. Like I did a degree in coding, but I also really love doing the audio side, and I prefer the creative side, honestly. I find that for me, I'd like to try to see things as this, a combination of both the technical and the creative to sort of come together. And that's the reason why I really love working within, game audio as well. Because
Hmm.
same thing as you,
Hmm.
when I was working in film, it just seemed very, metric. And there was a lot of like kind of honestly like dudes that were just like very set in their ways and very happy to make
Hmm.
all the money and keep other folks out. And I don't know. It just, yeah, game audio was like a nice sort of opening place for me to sort of land as well. And I love the fact of having new open questions all the time. For me,
Hmm.
that's really
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
I like continuing to learn as much as I can. Oh, there's another
Yeah.
question here too, and we'll wrap up soon. So I think this will probably be the last one. So for this one was talking about for the one with the bracelet where you get the high frequencies on the wristband. So for the sound assistance on the blind, oh sorry, this is on the blind project, so your current project.
Hmm.
Could an HRTF ambisonic mix in headphones use positional audio cues as a positional arrow system? So for navigation sound around optically perceived obstacles. So, so
It's essentially, yeah. Is that,
mhm.
sorry, was that it? Or there's more?
Well, there was a continuing saying, like instead of strap left, strap right, to avoid, there could be a cue of a sound effect playing front left direction, basically sort of like, leading someone. And that does sound like what you're currently working on, yeah?
Yeah, so we just have a slightly different philosophy. I mean, it goes more to the part of how blind people are perceived by the society and how oftentimes they perceive themselves in society. So um, basically, even with the orientation mobility training, which like teaches blind people to navigate the world, a lot of times they're put on a track. Like, okay, this is how you get to your local like grocery store, and they learn like landmarks and like, okay, make a turn here. This is where you cross the street. Like remember this like landmarks, and you kind of navigate this route. If you like leave this path, you'll die. That's kind of the message,
All right.
so they're not like it's kind of like learn helplessness and not
Mm,
like self-reliance, and they don't feel like they're able to just go and explore, just go walk around and explore, so you kind of experience what's around you. So instead of just giving navigational markers where it's almost like somebody is telling this person where to go, what we would like to do is kind of paint the world around them, and then they can decide how to plot their route around things or where to go, what to do. So, like, if there's a thing in front of me, I don't know, a desk that you know the person needs to get to something on the other side of a desk, we'll show that there's a desk here and kind of the dimensions, and then they can decide like, oh, am I going to go around on the right, am I going to go around on the left, as opposed to saying go right, go straight. um it's just kind of empowering the person to really to explore, like giving them information like as close as we can to a sighted person, or at least like the important cues that they might be want to use for like making these navigational choices. Yeah. So, but yes, absolutely, definitely, spatial audio is going to be used to show where things are and how big they are and all that kind of stuff.
mm-hmm. No, that sounds amazing. It's a huge open yeah, concept as far as a design problem challenge to
Yes.
overcome. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not terrified at all. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, no, we chatted a little bit talking about like trying to paint like yeah, like an oral landscape and to have it a little bit more where I think it's important also to think of aesthetics too, rather than always feel like turn left, turn
Yeah.
right, where it's just
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
because if you're anybody, I think would just get so annoyed at those systems. Like it's I think that's another thing. I mean, we have that so many times with just like interface stuff. Like I was really, I mean, there's little changes and stuff, but I've found it funny sometimes when you've got, it seems maybe the Japanese sometimes have a little bit of a different bent on it, but sometimes the sound design, say for their washers and stuff like that, are a little bit different than, whatever sort of the sort of version 1.0 of where it's just like, there's like laundry
Yeah.
done kind of thing. And I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of possibility to do that within these kind of like auditory design systems like the project that you're working on. So yeah, I think what we can do is wrap there. And yeah, there's I still I have plenty more questions, but also like yeah, I think we can just keep it at that because yeah, it's been a great chat. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and thank you so much for all the people. I'm pointing here at, not that you can see it, but on my YouTube screen, and say thank you for people that joined us on the chat. And this has been awesome. And yeah, this has been the School of Video Game Audio. My name is Leonard Paul. If you want to have a look at what the school does, we teach game audio courses. You can look us up at sovga.com. And Anastasia Devana, what is your website and how can people get in touch with you if they want to pick your brain?
Anastasia Devana on Twitter is probably the best.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you can post it in the description or chat or something.
Yeah, I'll
And
put it
my
on.
DMs are open, so feel free to just reach out.
Perfect. No, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you, folks, for joining us. And yeah, till next time. Ciao.
All right, bye.